Now we're going to start the Mishnah on the top of Tzadivav Hamid Beis. In the previous Mishnah, we had a bias katan that passes even lebasof, even after the gadol did a maimah. Our Mishnah is going to address the question of a bias katan after a bias katan. In other words, you have two ktanim, and they both had a bia with one single Yevamot, or you had one katan who had two bios with two Yevamos, bezu achar zu. Once again, either two ktanim each having a bia on the same Yevama, or one katan having two bios with two Yevamos. Ventesha shanim yomechet sheba al yevimto. Posel al yodo. So the second bia of the second katan will passel the Yevama onto the first ben katan. And the reason for this is because we said that bias katan is like maimer of a gadol. And according to the Rabbanon, if you have a maimer of a gadol after a maimer of a gadol, then the second maimer passes her on the first bala maimer. Because yesh maimer, acher maimer. And all this is based on the fact that the kinyan of maimer is not a complete kinyan. It's koneh u'mishayer. It's an incomplete kinyan. And therefore the second maimer after the first can be tofes, and she'll need a get after following the second maimar, and that get will passel her on the rishon. And it's just like the case of a chalitza, shecholitzla echad min ha'achim, neseres liyibum al kulam. And that is actually an application of the principle of kemen shel bona shuv lo yivim. Rabbi Shimon Omer lo posel. The second katan who had a bia does not passel her on the first katan. Rabbi Shimon holds that if maimar is koneh, it's koneh kinyan gomu. We have a suffix whether or not maimar is koneh or not koneh at all. But if it is koneh, it's koneh kinyan gomu according to Rabbi Shimon. Therefore, Mimanav Shach, she's muteris l'rishon. Im koneh. If the first one was koneh, then according to Rav Shimon, that's a kinyan gomu. And she's considered ishto shel rishon. And therefore, the second katan could not generate an isra on the first katan. But if it's not koneh at all, then the second one is not koneh at all as well. And she's not nesra al rishon. However, the sheni is going to be asura because of the tzad suffix that maybe maimer is koneh. And therefore, there was already a kinyan on the part of the rishon, which generates an isra on the sheni. And the same thing will apply to bias katan after bias katan. The Mishnah now goes on and says that these are the dinim of bias katan after bias katan. Ben teisha shanim yomechet shebal yevimto v'yachach bal tzarasa. So two ladies fell for yibum from one husband who died. First, he had a relationship with one of them, and then subsequently a relationship with the second one. And we're talking about a ben teisha shanim v'yom echad. and he had two bios, one after the other with the two nashim, the two tsaros that fell for Yibum. Is posel al yedei atzmo, according to Tanakama, the two Yevamos are asuras olav, because the Rabbanan hold that yesh maimer acha maimer, and therefore bias cotton, which is like a maimer begadol, is the first bias tofes and the second bias tofes. Because we're holding now yesh maimer acha maimer according to the Rabbanan. The second Yevama will have to receive a get because of the Isur Liyabe V'Shteim, Midin Baisecher Hu Bona Ve'ein Hu Bona Shtei Bate. After he gives a get to the Shniya, she Memela becomes Asur Al Rishona. Just like in Chalitza, if he was Chalitz to one of them, then Nesru Olav Kulu Kol HaShar. Rav Shimon Omer Lo Posel. The Bias Ben Tes, after the second beer, after the first beer, doesn't posel, because according to Rabbi Shimon, in the case of Maimar, if it is Kona, it's Kona Kinyan Gomo. Therefore, Bias Katan, after Bias Katan, the second beer is not moil, it's not meaningful, effective to pasel. And again, we go through the Mimonef. If the beer Ben Tes, or the Maimer of a Godel, right, is Kona Kinyan Legamre, so the Rishona already with his beer made her into Ishto. And the beer of the Shniya, the second beer, is not going to be able to be Kona. She's already married by virtue of the first beer. That's if we assume that Bias Ben Teisha is Kona Legamre. If we assume that Bias Ben Teisha, like the Maimer of a Godel, is not Kona, so then Bein Es HaRishonu, Bein Es HaShniyah Lo Kona. So the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Amar Lahem Rabbi Shimon L'Chachamim, the Chacham hold that Bias Katan HaSheni, or Bias Katan V'Yavam HaShniyah, Poseles, that's the sheet of the Chachamim, is Mimonav Shah. In Bia Rishona, if the first Bia of the Katan is called a Bia, and it was Kona the Yevama Legamre, is Bia Shniya in a Bia. Because after Yevama, after Yibum, there's no possibility of another Yibum. So the Bias Acher, or the Bias Yevama, or the Bias Yavam in the Yevama Shniya, is not able to generate an Isa, because she's already each Dolachol Dover, and the Zika was Paka. That's through the Bia Rishon of the Katan, on the side that it's Kona the Yevama Legamre. V'im Bia Rishona ain't a Bia, if it's not Kona, because his Bia is like a Maimer, and a Maimer is not Kona, is Bia Shniya Nami ain't a Bia. The second Bia of the Katan, or of the other Katan, in that same Yevama, is Nami Eina Bia, for the same reason that Bia Rishona is not considered a Bia. Is Mebela Nechshevas Yevama Kamochalo Bo Lea Klala with Teres Larisha. Bar says Masnisim Delo Ben Asa. The Sanya Ben Asa Omer Yesh Maimer Achar Maimar B'Shnei Yevamim V'Yevama Achas. V'Ein Maimer Achar Maimar B'Shtei Yevamos V'Yavam Echad. So we have two cases here. One case is where there are two Yevamim and one Yevama. So only one woman fell for Yibum to two brothers. And both of these brothers did a Maimar on that single Yevama. Now, since Maimar is only a takonas chachamim. It's not a kinyan government at Torah. Therefore, the power of these two Yevamim is equal in this Yevamah, because each one of these two Yevamim has the takonas chacham of Maimar, but one cannot be mafkia the koach of the other one. So that's in the case of Shnei Yevamim, the Yevama Achas. And now, what about Shtei Yevamos, the Yavam Echad? And the Yavam did a Maimar on both of these two Yevamos. V'zecher zeh. The second Maimar is not Tofes, and therefore it doesn't generate an Iser on the first Yavam. I mean, actually, there's only one Yavam. So she's Muteres Lo, because one Maimar, Berishona, is enough to impact on the other Maimar, the subsequent Maimar, in such a way that it doesn't have any koach. It's not a kinyan. And if it doesn't have the koach to create a kinyan in the second Yevama, then she's muteres even l'rishona. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Tzadivav Amid Beis. Ben Teisha Shonim V'Yom Echad. We're up to the second Mishnah. Shebal Yevimto, and we said that the bia of a katan is like mimer of a gadol. Umes. V'nafla isha lifnei achashlishi liyibum. Is choletes v'lo mitzyabemes. She needs chalitza from the third brother, but he's not allowed to be miyabim. Why? Since bias katan is considered like a mimer, not kona kinyan gomor, so therefore there's a zika left from the rishon, and therefore she certainly needs chalitza. But midrabanan, we add to her the zika of the katan that was a result of his bia, because the ben teisha kshanim yomechad bal yevimta. So that created a mixas kinyan. Now, if that be the case, she now has a zika to both Yevamim, the first and the katan. And there's a drush of Yevama Yovo Leha, Mishi Alea Zikas Yavam Echad, Velo Shalea Zika Shnei Yevamim. So here's a case of Zika Shnei Yevamim. Nasa Isha, the katan, married a woman. Umes, and the katan died. Without any children, he has brothers. Harei Zu P'tura. There's no yibum or chalitza. She can get married to anyone she wants. Even though a bias katan in arayos, for example, is meaningful, it's recognized, but his kedushin is not a kedushin. He cannot make a kinyan and an isha until he becomes 13 and Teisaros. Only in the case of a Yevama, where there's already a Zika Sibun, that's where the Chacham said that his bia is upgraded to the status of a bia chashuva, such that now he can generate an Isser on the Achim, and it's similar to the mimer of a gadol, that there's a kinyan b'miktzas to generate an Isser on the Achim. V'enteisha shana b'yom echad shabal yevimto. Umisha higdil. And after the katan became a gadol, nasa isha cheres, and she's an Eishes Ish Gemura. Umeis, now he died below banim. So his first wife, which he married as a bentesha, imlo yodas harishona, if he didn't have an intimate relationship with his first wife, Mishehigdil, after he became 13 years and simonim, so it means he never got a chance to make a kinyan and make her into Ishto Gemura, is Harishona Choletzes. She'll need chalitza from the third brother, Velomis Yabemes, because she too has a Zika Shnei Yevamot, as we saw in the Reisha. Because since he didn't have a dayan, he didn't have a relationship with her after he became a gadol, she's not Ishto Gemura, and therefore she has a Zika to the first brother. Ashnia, and the other wife of the Katan that he married after he became a gadol, O choletzes, O misyabenes. Either she will have chalitza to the third brother, because lo niftar al yedei chalitza shel rishona, lo hoisa rishona ishto gemura shel katan el rak midrabanan. So the chalitza of an ishus of a katan is not not effective enough to pater up the shnia. So that's called choletzes, that the third brother will have to give chalitza. Omis yabemes. That means that even though he gave chalitza to the first wife, he's allowed to be miyabim second. It says lo yivne. And the answer is because since Rishona was not Ishto Gemura, it was only Midrabanan, therefore the chalitza does not generate an Isa on the Shnia, because that's Ishto Gemura. But Rav Shimon Omer, as far as the Shlishi is concerned, miyabim li'ezu sheyirtze. Even the Rishona is muteres liyibum, and there's no zika shnei yevamot, because the bias katan, according to Rav Shimon, is a suffix. It's either kona legamre or it's not kona at all. And if it's kona legamre, then nifka hazika shel rishon. So the zika of the rishon is paka, and now she's only Eishes Hasheni. If on the other hand it's not kona, then she only has a zika from the rishon, and she's not Eishes Hasheni. And therefore, after he's miyabim one of them, cholitz l'shniya. Why? Because he doesn't have a possibility al pidin to be miyabim both of them. Because if bias bentesh is kona legamre, then shteim nashos hasheni. But mikol makom tzarchu lachlot tzla. Af shel etzad zeh shebias bentesh kona legamre ein shteim tzrichas chalitza elacholei tomiyabim liachas mihen aval miidach efshar shebias bentesh ein kona. Arishona he Eishes Arishon. In Kenem Shtei Noshim Mishtei Batim. V'yein Achas Men Poteres Sashnia. Now, Reb Shimon disagrees only in the din of the Reisha, in the case of a katan, Shebal Yevimtov a mess, and he disagrees, and he holds that Mutal Yabma, because this is not considered Zika Shnei Yevamim, because if the mimer is Kona Legamre, then she's Eishes HaKatan. And if the mimer is not Kona at all, she's the Eishes HaRishon. So she only has one Zika. And the Mishnah adds that Echad Shu Ben Teisha Shanim Yom Echad Echad Shu Ben Esrim Shlo Hevi Shtei Saros. And this is the case of a Saros. Omar Rava Hadi Omar Abbanot. Dika Shnei Yevamim Michlatz Cholza. Yibume Lo Miyabma. She needs Chalitza, but it's also to Miyamim. Lo Tema Hecha Di Ikat Tzara. Dika Lemigza Mishum Tzara. Tahacha Lekat Tzara is Michlatz Cholza. Yibume Lo Miyabma. So the Gemara is trying to exclude the interpretation that this din only applies when there's a tzara. In other words, the second ach who died has an additional wife, and that's a Mishnah earlier on Daf Lamed Aleph. Shlosha achim Nisuim l'shalosh nachrios umeis echad mihem v'yosav hasheni maimar umes. And it says shteim cholzos v'lo misyabos. And that's a case where the Yevama has its sorrow. But we could have said that only in that situation the Chacham prohibited the Yevama who's the Eishes Harichon to be misyabim because of the Gzeira mishum tzara. He explains the Gzeira mishum tzara here. He says, "Shelo yovo liyabim gamas hatzara, she eishes hasheni agmura." Because if that would happen, and he would be yabi the sheni as well, the eishes hasheni, is then they're going to say that shtei yevamos habos mi by echad misyabos. But in a situation where there's no tzara, then we would say muteres hayevama balas hamaymer lisyamim olu maymer nekonik kinyin gomu v'inech sheves le'eishes harishon bilvad v'eno lezika shnei yevamim. No, says the Gemara, we're going to reject that, as logical as it seems. The hacha in the din that the Mishnah is dealing with in the Reisha of a cotton ball yevimpa of a mess, it's leka tzara. There was no other tzara. Is v'yafal pichein shaninu b'mishnah she'im meis hakotam v'nofla liyibum michlatz cholza v'l yibum ilo miyabim, which means that there's zika shnei yevamim. So we see clearly that even in a situation where there's no tzara, nevertheless she's asur l'bailas hamayma. The Baal Samaimer is Asura L'Syabim, because even if the Maimer of the Sheni is Kona only Midrabana, but it's considered a Zika Shnei Yevamim. The Mishnah says Nasa Ishu Mes Harezu Ptura, because there's no Ishus to a Katan, Tanino Nami, Tanino Laha. We have this in a Brayso on Rabbanan, Shote Vekatan Shenasu Umesu. So the shota or the katan died, and there are no banin. The shosayim p'turas min hachalitza min hayibu. There's no Nesuin, we don't recognize Nesuin to a Shota, to a Katan. The Mishnah says, Ben Teisha v'yom echad shabal yevimto, u'mishe higdil nasa isha cheres, im lo yodas rishona, mishe higdil, or rishona choletzes v'lo misyabemetz, or she has zika shnei yevamim, but the shnia, o choletzes, o misyabemetz. So Gemara asks Akasha, why is it that the shnia is muteres l'syabim yasu as bias ben teisha kim maimer begadol? Right, that was the Gemara back on Daf Lamed Aleph, that the bia of a cotton ben teisha is like the maimer of a gadol. We saw it here too, and therefore the balas hamaimar is not misyabemes because there's a zika shnei yevamim and she generates an iser also on a tzara v'tidche tzara miyibu. Is tidche eishes harishon shalea boa katan es tzarasa eishes hakatan miyibu. Just 1 second. Is ben teisha. Gemara's kasha now. 1 second. Our Mishnah says that once the ben teisha has a beer with the Yevama, and then when he gets to 13, he marries another woman. So Rishona choletzes v'lo misyabemes. Second, this I don't follow. I'm gonna stop here, and we'll have to finish this up a little later on. I need a fresh start on this. It's already more complicated.